welcome Carol Jones of the League of Women Voters and Mike Brickner from the ACLU. Welcome back to Mike. Welcome to Carol for the first time. This is a big deal, and we cannot talk about it enough. And that is the possibility that some voters could be disenfranchised here in Delaware, their votes anyway, if they do not reach the Department of Elections by 8 p.m. on voting day, election day. Who wants to jump in with the background of how you two got together, your organizations?
Mike, do you want to start, because you were the one who initiated
Sure.
everything.
Sure, happy to. Well, first of all, really glad to be here and to be here with Carol from the League of Women Voters. The ACLU and the League are both 100 years old, and we've been working together, I think, all 100 years that we've been together. So it's great having another project here. And you know, we saw this issue crop up over the summer. As you know, both of our organizations fully support the legislature's move to allow people to cast votes by mail without an excuse. With the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, that is what a lot of voters are going to have to rely upon so that they don't have to expose themselves to COVID-19. But unfortunately, one of the things that we are still left with, though, in the state of Delaware is that all of the ballots have to be to the Department of Elections by 8 p.m. on Election Day. And we saw news coverage a few weeks ago that the United States Postal Service has been experiencing significant delays. They've had a lot of funding cuts, a lot of staff members who have been sick with COVID-19, and we've seen several of our processing centers, including those right here in Delaware, lose some of their machinery, so they're not able to process that mail as quickly. And so a few weeks ago, the Postal Service told the Department of Elections that for voters to be able to actually have their ballots count, they need to mail their ballot at least a week before the election. And we just know a lot of voters are going to wait until closer to the election day. And that could lead to thousands of ballots being tossed out, unfortunately.
I want to digress for just a second, though. Carol, folks may not realize that the League of Women Voters, a nonprofit organization, really grew out of the women's suffrage movement. What's your elevator line when people ask you what the League of Women Voters does?
Well, the League of Women Voters does its best to register voters and to get them out to vote and to inform them. And over the years, as it has, I must say, become increasingly easier to register to vote. We've done a lot of things to help make it easier for the average person to register to vote. We're still greatly involved with that, but informing the electorate at large about the issues has become more and more important to us. So I would say right now that our mission is education. Primary mission is education.
Can't have too much education, that's for sure.
I don't think so.
And bravo to the League, and you, Mike, your organization, for joining forces. I must say, some people might be going, do we really need a lawsuit to get this done in Delaware? Can you explain?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, you know, the governor and the Department of Elections, their hands were really tied. I mean, if you look at what the state law says, it's very specific about when the deadline has to be. And so, you know, unfortunately, their hands were sort of tied. And I think that With the COVID-19 pandemic, the legislature is not likely to come back for some sort of emergency session to fix something like this. And so, especially with all of the U.S. Postal Service slowdowns that we were seeing in the last month or so, that made the issue climb even more exponentially in our attention. And unfortunately, we saw some of the fallout from that slowdown with the presidential primary in July. We had over 5% of all of the vote by mail ballots that were cast ended up being rejected. And one of the biggest reasons was because people's ballots got there too late. And so that was in a small election where not a lot of folks voted. We expect much higher turnout in November, and that could mean more rejected ballots.
Look, let's put it on the table. Donald Trump has sown the seeds of doubt about voting by mail, and it's been reinforced by a lot of other people. That's one. Two, we've all noticed the slowdown in the mail. So many people are saying, I've heard them say, well, I really would rather vote by mail. I'd feel so much safer, but I'm really concerned my ballot won't be counted. Carol?
Well, I think we do have to remember that when this law was put into place, no one could have foreseen this two perfect storms meeting like this. One in the middle of a pandemic, which really does affect the ability of many people to be able to get out and vote in a timely fashion. And two, a slowing down of the post office, which we have come to depend on so greatly in the past years. So I don't want to go around, casting any aspersions on somebody for not having 2020 foresight. But it's here. And what we would like to do is, by filing this lawsuit, we hope we can give the state an opportunity legally to, at least for this one time, temporarily, to give us an extension so that we can make up for that confluence of storms that has come upon us, which, has, however you want to attribute the causes, it's there, and we have to live with it. We have to face it. We have to deal with it.
Sure. And again, let's be clear. This shouldn't be a big deal. All you're asking for is a 10-day extension so that although people can vote earlier, but if for some reason that ballot arrives after 8 p.m. on election day, it's not thrown out. Can you talk about that, Mike?
Absolutely. I think it's important to remember that voters here in Delaware can actually request a vote by mail ballot up to 4 days before the election. And so, right now we're hearing that most mail in the state is taking anywhere between 7 to 9 days just to go one direction. And so I could be a voter that is following the letter of the law and request a ballot the week before the election, thinking that, well, that's the law allows me to do that. But I don't receive my ballot until 2 or 3 days before the election, and I mail it back, hoping that it reaches the Board of Elections in enough time, and thinking that maybe it will. And unfortunately, you are then at the mercy of the U.S. Postal Service and how quickly it's going to move. And so that could lead to so many people being disenfranchised. And so again, what our lawsuit is hoping to do is not to move the date of the election or anything like that, but it's saying that for voters who mail it in enough time, who are following the rules, that they should not be disenfranchised, that they should not be punished simply because the Postal Service is moving too slow.
Sure. And how do you recommend, Carol or Mike, that people who decide they'd like to vote by mail get a ballot in time? When can you request it, and can you do it now? And does it have to be on phone, by mail?
immediately after the primary, we'll all be getting a new ballot. I mean, we still have the primary election to go through here in Delaware. We're really late with that. This is going to be our last year, hopefully, but anyway, we're stuck with it. So we will all be getting a letter from the state asking us if we want to vote by mail, or even giving us the option to vote electronically. A lot of people are not comfortable with voting electronically, but they have this notice, and I'm sure it will be out really very quickly after September 15th. My advice is to vote and turn it and send it in right away. But a lot of people might feel, well, we haven't heard everybody yet. We're still mulling over. I'm not sure. Then I would urge them to, first of all, mail that back and request the ballot. That's the first thing to do, right, Mike? And then secondly, when you get that ballot, mail it in as quickly as your conscience will let you.
Sure. When is the 29th, the first debate? I mean, if you don't know after that, so folks should be able to do that, I would think.
You say that, but that's not always the case. And I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. But even if they're sitting on the fence after that debate, I would ask them to really search their conscience and cast that ballot as quickly as they possibly feel comfortable doing so. It's important. Don't let it go until the last minute.
Sure.
Please. Well, and remember, and remember, there's so many other important races on the ballot other than just president, right? President is certainly important. There's so many other state and local races that are so critical. And I don't always know how I'm going to vote on those when I get the ballot. I have to do a little bit of research. And I love to go to Vote 411, which is the League of Women Voters website, because they have a lot of really great information there. ACLU also has, if you're interested in justice reform issues, we have votesmartjusticede.org, which has candidates' positions on various police reform issues this time.
Carol, talk about Vote 411. That's such a cool initiative.
It really is. And it's been around for several years. But we're seeing a huge growth this year. We've in Delaware, it's across the nation. It's a League of Women Voters effort that's in all of the 50 states and the territories, and it's grown every single year. And this year in Delaware alone, we've had a 300% increase in our hits, and we're just in the primary season. So we know that we're reaching more people. It's the outreach is good. We're just doing everything we can to make it even better, because it gives information on each candidate for each office in each locality. All you have to do is enter your zip code and all of the information comes out. And we've had the advantage this year of being able to translate most of it into Spanish as well, for those people who are American citizens but may not fully have a command of the language as yet.
Wow.
So we
talk about a public service.
Yeah, we're very proud of that. Very proud.
You know, I am curious about something, Mike. How quickly can you adjudicate something like this? Could it linger until too late?
We're hoping not. So, you know, I come to Delaware from Ohio, where there have been all told, you know, dozens of voting rights lawsuits over my career. And usually when you file something that has a strict deadline, like an election, the courts will consider it in an expedited way. And so we've asked the court for that speedy review. And so our goal is to have it decided so that it can be implemented for the November election. I do think it's important that folks know that because of the time frame and everything, and some other various reasons, we are only focusing on the November election, not the September primary election.
Well, again, to summarize then, what this lawsuit is asking for is just 10 extra days following election day for ballots to trickle in and be counted. And I'm assuming, this is kind of maybe a funny question, but nobody's ballot is opened and registered until everyone's ballots are opened and registered. Is that true? They don't open them and count them as they come in.
So it's an interesting question. So it actually varies a little bit by state. So some states, they don't actually tally the early votes, but they do allow them to be put into some of the sorting machines and to start to be processed, but not actually tabulated, because they don't want folks to know what the vote tally might be ahead of time.
Of course.
But then in other states, you are totally prohibited from being able to look at the vote by mail ballot beforehand. So that's one of the reasons that I think a lot of groups are telling the media and members of the public, it'll be November 3rd, and chances are it's going to be a very long night for a lot of us, because many states are not going to be able to open up and start counting those vote by mail ballots until after polls close at 7 or 8 p.m. whenever they happen to close in that state. And then other states, potentially like Delaware, would have days after the election that ballots could continue to come in. And so it could be several days until we really know the final result, if it's a close race in any state.
Wow. I heard someone, maybe it was NPR today, say, if for no other reason to vote by mail, the Russians can't tamper with vote by mail like they can with machines and voting machines. And hey,
think about it. I mean, it's already happened. We know it's happened. So it's certainly not outside the realm of possibility.
Sure.
There's a lot to be said for voting by mail.
Yeah, I think what people should know is that even though we have filed this lawsuit, as I said earlier, both the League and the ACLU, we both supported the expansion of vote by mail, because we know that it works in other states and it's a secure, effective way to cast your ballot. It's just that with this specific deadline that we have right now in Delaware, it just isn't going to work with the slowdowns that we see in the Postal Service. But in terms of security and being able to use the system, it's a great system, and folks should feel confident going to cast their ballot, and they'll hopefully feel even more confident voting by mail if we are successful in our lawsuit and get that deadline extension.
Great. One final question: is there already an extension for military serving overseas, or expatriates who still vote living abroad? Or
not an extension in Delaware. So people who live abroad can actually get their ballot a little bit earlier than domestic voters. So they're known as UOCAVA voters, and they can get it 45 days before the election. And that's true across the country. However, in Delaware, they have the same deadline of election day. Now in other states, so again, I'm coming from Ohio. In Ohio, we do have that 10-day extension. Military voters also have up to 10 days after the election to get their ballots back.
Well, I'll say to you what I said to Governor Carney on the show last week. May the force be with you. It sounds like a great initiative, and I wish you a lot of luck. And can I get you both back to see how this story comes out?
You want to do a post-mortem, do you?
Maybe, we'll see.
Of course. Listen, I'm up for it. Anything that's going to focus people on the issues around that are facing us around the election, we ought to give them as much knowledge about it as we can. So you bet.
All right. Mike Brickner, ACLU, and Carol Jones of the League of Women Voters, I thank you so much. Thanks for all you're doing, and I will look forward to speaking with you again pretty soon. All right?
Great.
Okay
Take
now.
care.
Bye.
Bye.